educate her why you're giving her smaller chunks based using the 0 to 100 language. Because if she says all day, you're taking the 100.
Okay.
So now, you know these two concepts. You know them well. What was that?
Make her ready.
Well, you could sit there and go, you know, one of the things that we do in therapy is something called a rule book. So educate her as to what that is, in whatever language you want.
Explaining her what it is, describe it to her, so she can understand.
Right. Educate. When in doubt, educate. And when in doubt, you give a handout.
And
That's
you
a
can
good
tell
one. Write
when-
that one down. When in doubt, give a handout.
When in doubt.
You can have a handout, but I'm going to be giving you all these handouts. What a rule book is.
But you could also, it's another learning to, because when you say something to a client and they look at you like, with this confused look on their face, that's your cue to say, well, let me tell you what I mean. Or let me explain to you what I'm saying. You know, and so you don't even have to have that in your head, oh, I have to educate. You can see on their face.
Right.
When you say something, they're going to be like, I'm not sure I understand.
Yeah,
And they
why
not,
would
may
you
not always
give me
say.
8 hours of art
Yeah.
and then tell me no. Only one.
Exactly. And they're not going to come out and say, I don't understand what you're saying.
Yeah,
Could
they're
you
not.
explain
They
it to
say,
me?
yeah,
They're going to be
yeah.
okay, and then walk out going, what the heck did she say?
How many of you have ever gone to the doctor or gotten surgery or been with someone that's at the doctor and they give you this piece of paper with like the post-op and they talk so fast and this and this and this and you just sit there. That's one of the big things if you've ever been with nurses, nurse education. So I told you guys I ran the nursing school. Nurse education, so fast, you have a little bit of time. No, you sit and you take the time. So when you see, as Mr. Pach is saying, on their face, in my case, I'm going to educate you. And what do? I use a metaphor. I use a myth. I use a story. I might use another client. I use something personal. So go, the reason,
Okay, the
blah, blah,
reason
blah.
why I may be thinking that we could do a smaller, more reasonable amount of time with your busy schedule is because you want to end up making it a habit. So by picking smaller amounts of time, it'll be easier to attain and it'll maybe keep you going in that way.
right? And you can teach her what a SMART goal is. And attainable is the A. So SMART goals is what we want to try to get clients to do. S is specific, M is measurable, A is attainable, R is realistic, and T is timely. So she's trying to get you to something attainable. And it's more success when you do an hour versus if you dedicate yourself to 16 hours or 8 hours. You set yourself up for failure if maybe one day you can't meet that goal. So that's why we're talking about attainable. Now, why does she have to write it down?
Because it makes it real. It's tangible, you can see it.
Tell her.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, so what we can maybe do is a contract that you can make with yourself, for yourself. And in the contract, you're just gonna set out that you're gonna do 1 to 2 hours every other Saturday. And you're gonna sign that contract and make a bond and a pact with yourself that you'll continue it.
Sunday, not Saturday.
Huh?
You said Saturday.
Sunday.
Okay. So I would provide the client with the contract
Okay.
or sit there and do it with them. Okay, so she's using a contract, that's the thing we've talked about. I have what's called a rule book, where I get a client to get like a notebook, and then you can either divide it into sections, and that could be a personal, a you time section, or it can just be a rule that you write. So I call it putting a rule in the rule book. That every other Sunday for 1 to 2 hours, you'll dedicate that time, or you'll set aside time to do art. Is that defined?
I was going to say, rule book is a definition, is a good definition to use. One of the things that I think you also have to keep in mind is certain words mean different things to people. Like when you kept saying contract, to me, it sounded more like, oh my God, contract, that means I really have to do this. I start to get anxious, you know? Right. So I don't like the word contract. But so, yeah, you have to kind of watch their expressions too, because if you said contract to me, I'd be like,
Right, that's just more work for her.
It's just
'Cause
more
now,
work for me.
contracts aren't meant to be broken per se.
Exactly.
So educating, that is exactly where you're going to use the nonverbals. Clients do not want to let the therapist down.
Right.
It's a problem. We think that they're gonna tell us.
And that's why they say yes, 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 and they walk out and they have no idea what you
No
just said.
clue what you just said.
Do you think it would be, well, for what you're saying, my understanding would be, if I had the plan right now in front of me, I would just, obviously I would have my pad, taking notes. So I would just maybe write, like you put in here on the board, the 0 to 100,
I would.
and say, okay, so right now you're here.
Yes.
We want you to
When
get
in
to
doubt,
this
give a
point.
handout. Perfect. You draw it, you have a whiteboard. I actually meant to say that. In your office, I have a stack of papers and I have a whiteboard. You get up in the client session and you do exactly that. Excellent. 0, 100. You're here now. What can you do to get a little closer to the 100? And if the client says, all day, go, well, all is a word that's really more about 100. What other way can we get you to the 100? Or to off the 0? And then you gave the suggestion of 1 to 2 hours. Okay?
Because therapy is also a learning experience. That's why we teach, we educate. And so learning happens in a variety of ways, and one might be visual. So maybe they need to see that 0 to 100.
And that's why I'm giving you these handouts. You can modify as you wish and you can make your own, but I want you guys to leave with a packet. And there's others that I gave them at the beginning when I first got here, but I'm cleaning them up, so I'll add them. I'm gonna make them in this similar so they all will kind of match. And you could use anything that's been used. You can go on the internet, all of this stuff. This is my stuff in the sense of my theory, but the other theories, it's all out there today. Mr. Pachi made a copy. I want to talk to you a little bit about the labyrinth after, but is that something we've talked about, but some idea that I have? The goddess questionnaire, there's so many tools. So that's a wonderful idea, yes. So you're at the 0, drawing it on your board or taking out a piece of paper, or if you have a handout that says 0 to the 100, this thing, how can we get you closer to that? So we get the 1 to 2 hours of art on Sunday every other week. Perfect. Now, as you were saying, what is defined as art?
Is that like molding and making bases? I make her define?
Yeah,
Yes.
because what
But she
if,
did define it.
okay, but you can, that's another teachable moment.
Okay.
You know that art could be journaling, art could be going out in the park, art could be taking a labyrinth and doing. So you don't want the client to necessarily be stuck in a box. There's so many different, for me, teaching is an art. That's my creative thing. I'm not very creative, but some would say that teaching is, in the sense of coming up with things or whatever. It's using the right brain. So you could, you don't have to, but it's something, especially if you want to fill time and you're nervous, you could. We have to be realistic, especially at the beginning, that 50 minutes can seem like forever. To me, 90 minutes isn't enough. I had to learn. Ending a session for me was one of the hardest things that I had. So I offer 60 minutes or 90 minutes. I also offer 30 and 45, but those are very rare. So for me, the alarm rings at 90 minutes or 5 minutes till, because it's always 5 minutes before, and I say anything else before we wrap up. And I'm like, God, I can't believe it was already time. I could be in the midst of teaching something. I'll finish it out, but then I wrap up. So wrapping up a session is a very common thing for someone to have a difficulty with, but at the beginning, 50 minutes can seem like, 50 is traditional, 45 to 50, 55 minutes is like a traditional session, and it can seem like forever. So don't minimize the importance of using education, things that you know, to use time, because you're not hurting anyone, you're teaching, and that could stretch out. So you could teach her about, why the 1 to 2 hours versus the whole day or whatnot. Okay, what else, could we give her?
Oh, we're there right now, so we don't have resources.
What do you
for,
mean?
Like, places where she could, like where she lives in her area, where she could take courses.
Okay, could you give her some ideas?
But what if, I don't know where she lives and what's in her area.
Right, well, the client, do not work harder than your
That's right.
client.
Don't do all the work for her.
You don't do the work for the client, but you could give suggestions. Maybe the YMCA, or maybe this, or maybe that. If you don't know, you don't know. Google it. They can Google it.
Like,
Yep.
Yeah, I tell clients all the time, Google. Sometimes in the middle of a session, I get so excited because I want to know. I'm like, oh, let's Google that. And I'll Google and I'll be like, oh, look.
okay.
Or I do this at times because it's resources that I have, but sometimes I'll be like, oh, you know what? There's something, I can't exactly remember the name of that movie, or I can't exactly remember, but I'm going to get it to you and I'll send you a picture. And then you make a note. Do not tell a client you're going to do something and then don't do it. That is one of the easiest ways to lose rapport with a client. Don't do it. Write it down. Remind yourself that that is something that you need to get to them if you promised that you were going to get it.
And I was going to suggest that sometimes we feel the need to end a session by saying, okay, well, let's stop here and we'll talk about it next time. Because that may backfire, because when they come to you next time, they may not want to talk about that. You have to let
Right.
them decide why they're coming to you.
Yeah, they could have had something major happen. Look, this all started because her aunt passed 10 days ago.
Yeah.
I mean, I was planning on having you guys counsel one another today. I was like, they're gonna work. And then she's like, oh, we have new students, so we had to start with something. And then look at that segue. You have to be ready
Yes.
for whatever comes.
You can have an idea of the direction you want to go in, but you have to let the client tell
It
you.
can't be scripted because something major could have happened in their life. So that's why these are concepts that work in no matter what.
See you with a notebook with some good points to bring up
That's
next time.
perfect. There's
No.
nothing wrong with
And then they come
that.
and they switch it, and then when notes are like useless.
Well,
Exactly.
But.
Yeah, you don't want to say,
sure
okay,
they're
well,
not useless.
I know you want to talk about that, but we have to do this
Right,
first.
because I am ready to talk about this
Exactly.
today. So I'm sorry that you're ready to die, but this is what we're doing.
Outline and number
If we
one
have
is
some
not
time,
that.
we'll get to it.
I put our book down. idea. It's so smart.
Excuse me,
And
you're
I'm
going off
sure-
script.
I'm sure that you can segue.
I'm gonna sprinkle in. They're right here.
And I'm sure that you can segue. You know, one of the things that I do is when a client calls, is like, oh, I have some things I have to tell you. I want to get it clear, this, and then we start. So if there is something that you thought of that was resonated from the previous session, you can absolutely bring that up. You could start like that and go, okay, what do you want to work on today, or what's going on, or how was your week, or whatever. So don't censor yourself. I mean, if they're crying and something major, well, you're not gonna, but for the most part, you could start off, oh, there's something that I thought of during the week when I was thinking about you, or I read this article, I made you a copy. You could do that and then segue into what they want to talk about. Yes.
If you wanna, there's like 30 more minutes left, and let's say I'm the therapy now, and myself, it's my client, I would ask her, have you ever taken an art class? And then they say, oh yeah, it's like, what was it about? Is that where you got your interest in art? And just kind of get like the background, why she turned to, creating stuff, or why it is that the free time that she has, that's what she wants to dedicate it to. So is it something that you used to do with a family member, or is it something that as a kid you were really creative and your parents put you in a art class?
Is Cancer the creator? Is Cancer?
No, the
Which
mother.
one's the creator?
Leo,
Leo?
the son. So, and it's also the
Oh,
best
Cancer. Cancer is
expression.
very, what is it? I'm wearing it actually.
The nurturer, the mother, the family, very Demeter.
Okay.
So the creator is the 5th house, which is the sun, It has to do with all sorts of self-expression of love. So somebody who does not make time to create, we've talked about this with the second chakra, the person who does not make time to create anything is having zero self-expression of love. That's very, very important. I love the idea of asking perhaps where that person got that creativity or the lack of. Why? It's origin story. It's going to let you know perhaps if it was a priority in the home or not. If the priority in the home was to cook, and cooking is a definite creative thing, but the person finds it as a chore, well, I have to cook and I have to do this and I have to do that, they're not using that as a creative expression. And if art was the creative expression, but it was the last thing they were allowed to do, kind of like dessert, you only got dessert if you behaved, then that person is punishing themselves. And through asking the story about it, you can always put the onus on the client. Tell me the story. Tell me how that happened. Tell me where you learned that. Always go to childhood. That's your anchor.
When you said creating, now I'm trying to figure out why creating would be, and then trying to tie it in.
Totally, so you're thinking right. And you can ask about second chakra. She isn't making time to create. You can ask her, do you have any physical issues? Have you ever had any ovary problems? Have you ever had... You're already thinking the right way. You're just having trouble finding the question. Well, the question is always the hardest thing to do. Not because it's hard, but because you think that there's a perfect question. There ain't no perfect question. I pull questions out of my ass. I don't know. I'm just asking. And then I pull the thread. But I want to know what Sunday means. And funny, Sunday. So sun is the creator. So we're in the same thing. What is Sunday? Where is your time of worship?
I've always had this thing with Sunday, I don't know.
There has to be a story. Tell us.
You know how people say, oh, Monday is like the worst day. I actually find Monday to be my lucky day. Most of the great things that
You made it through Sunday.
That's right.
Finally.
That's why it's so lucky.
So Sundays I usually just take it to, you know, the things that I do is actually, you know, create organic soaps. And I usually do it on a Sunday. And then I just do it because that's my chill day. Like,
How was
nobody
Sunday
can touch
growing
my
up?
Sunday.
What was Sunday growing up? You're on to it. It's her create day. And when she was young, it was the creator's day. So you're right there. Words have meaning. Go with it. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. It will unfold. What was Sunday growing up? And when in doubt, go to the childhood.
Well,
Or who taught you that Sunday was the day to create or for the creator?
well, part of my growing up experience, I kind of just blocked it away just because there was a lot of stuff going on that I didn't like and it really affected me. So I just blocked those memories.
What kind of things? I don't need the story, but general.
That's when I moved. So I left my family behind to live with my mom in England, which it was completely different. I was bullied because I was the only one who spoke Spanish and didn't speak English. I was bullied. I was the only Hispanic in the entire
What made you
school.
move?
My mom, she already lived there for a few years, and you know the whole thing in Cuba is you gotta get out as soon as possible. So
What day of the week did you move?
it was January 11th of 2008, but I'm not sure. how long.
Was it a weekend?
I don't remember. Like I said, I blocked a lot in my psychology class. I actually started opening it up a little bit just because I really have to move on, because I feel like everything that I'm putting out there in the universe, I'm not giving my full potential just because I'm
January
blocked.
11th.
Yeah.
January 11th, 2008.
Tuesday.
And
Can I ask you a question? What age were you?
11, 12. Yeah, I was. That's when I also started having suicidal thoughts, and trying to make them come true. So that's.
Now, notice that she left sunny Cuba in January
Cold,
to cold, wet,
very gray.
winter
And lonely.
gray in England.
Cuba, I had my entire family. England, I only had my mom, which I've never really had a good relationship with my mom. So it was very, very traumatic for me. It was a whole new experience. New people. I remember when I got to the airport in England, I started having like a panic attack. And I told mom, I can't breathe. The air here, I can't breathe it. It's too thick. I don't know why. I remember just saying, I can't inhale. Like the air was so thick in my head it was so thick that I couldn't breathe. And I told her, put me back in the plane, I want to go home. And
How
obviously
long
I
were you
couldn't
forced to live there?
until I was 16,
For 5 years. And you're now how old?
23.
What happened at 21?
What happened at 21? Not much. I only stopped thinking or trying to stop thinking about those negative thoughts.
Not much. I just decided to stop thinking about suicide. Why did I ask her what happened at 21?
She had her 14-year-old or 14-year thing.
Well,
And then-
I just counted 5, because she was in England for 5 years. So I just counted 5, but you could do it that way too, 7, 14, 21. Something had to happen. Every 7 years or something marked. Okay? So those are important dates. So what happened that made you stop thinking of committing suicide?
I had a relationship,
Of course.
and
It had to be. I knew the answer. Okay.
that was actually that's what happened when I was 21.
Look at her. Look how she changed.
Yeah, I just remember. Yeah.
First one.
No, not my first one, but my first love.
Okay.
And I just felt like no matter what I was going through, I could always pick up my phone, call him or text him, and he would make me feel better. And I always said, oh, I can't leave him now. Like, he makes me so happy, and I make him so happy.
And listen to that. I can't leave him now. It's worth living now because there's some other. So you see that pattern. Okay, so then what happened?
And the last time I ever thought about doing something like that was when I was going through the stuff with my aunt. And it came all real to me. And I was like, holy shit, I don't want to be there. Like, I need to. And I was telling, my partner at the time, we're not together anymore, but I still don't want to, kill myself. I used to tell him, she's so young and she hasn't experienced shit. I want to experience it for her. And, I think about, she was, I think it was 56, and she was just there in her bed, the hospital bed.
And listen to that. She hasn't experienced shit. I want to experience it for her. I'm going to now choose to live because there's a partner. I am now going to choose to live because I'm going to live for another person. Can you live for another person? No. But there has to be guilt. There has to be pain as pleasure or pleasure as pain, and some other that makes it okay that I have permission that now I'm allowed to fill in the blank.
Yeah.
You see? It just unfolds. We didn't do anything. Continue, sorry about
That's okay. And when I saw her in agony, I was thinking myself, I always thought of myself dying in agony. Because, like you said, like
that. Of course, you're about to reach heaven, the afterlife.
I wanted to go out, and every time I would imagine me doing it. By the way, I would always do it pill related. So I wanted to go in my sleep. I didn't want to be like in pain, but I also wanted to just not be. And I stopped thinking about that because I said, oh well, she's dying. She's never gonna be able to hug her kids, hug her grandkids. She's never gonna be able to eat, which I love food. I was like, holy shit, I will never be able to eat again. I'll never be able to Netflix and chill. And that's when I realized, like, why would I wanna leave this life when I'm having all the food that I can get and all the sex that I can get and all the drugs that I can get. So, I thought about it. And I
This
said,
was at 21?
No, this was not.
Oh, this was now, and you're how old?
23.
Okay.
And that's when I realized, okay, I don't, and it's funny because I haven't thought about it since this whole thing happened.
So you grew up Jehovah's Witness. From what age to what age were you practicing?
From when I was born to maybe 16, 17.
What's Jehovah's Witnesses' take on suicide?
Forbidden. Like, you can't do that. You're not, you don't own your life. You have no right to take it away.
Okay, so
every
you're 12 years old, you go to London, and you're having suicidal thoughts, and you're a Jehovah's Witness. How did you punish yourself for those thoughts?
I remember.
Do you see why I use that word? The psychological orgasm. We punish ourselves. Remember how I said, if your inner child has an outbreak, if your inner child, that cusp of that fifth house, in our case, impulsive, pick up and move to Texas, okay, then it's because somewhere you violated yourself. If her religion strictly prohibits suicide, and she's at an age where she is practicing that religion, whether she wants to or not, that's her religious belief, and she is doing something strictly prohibited from the religion, she must punish herself. That's why I use that word. Don't worry so much about the question. Try to push through the message you're trying to get or elicit the response from the client. So what did you do to punish yourself? And let them talk. They will answer. They will figure it out. What did you do to punish yourself for having suicidal tendencies when your religion strictly prohibits it?
I do remember just taking this one time that always comes to mind because it was the worst. I took around probably 60 pills of different kinds. And I just remember each pill I was saying, I'm sorry. Like, God forgive me. And that same night, I went to sleep. Well, I knocked the hell out because most of the pill was sleeping pills. And I remember I was sleeping and I was like this in my bed. And I felt something pulling me up. And I'm waking up to my arm going like this and lifting me off my bed. And a second later, I just ran to the toilet and I threw up every single pill. And they weren't even dissolved or anything. They were like, the whole pill was there. And it had gone by like maybe an hour or two. And I remember this force just pulling me up. And I remember saying to myself, as I was throwing up, I was like, holy shit. Like, there must be a good damn reason why God put me into this world that I cannot leave it until I make this happen. I don't know if it's because I'm gonna bring world peace, or if I'm gonna have the cure for something, or maybe I'm the mother of the person that's gonna make those things happen. But there is a very important reason why I'm still on this earth.
There's your value. There's your value system. If I am on this earth, there has to be a good reason. And up until that moment, she has not discovered what that reason is, but she has permission to live. She no longer has to have pain. A pleasure is pain. but she must have a good reason to live in order for her to wait and see and discover what this thing is. And her goals are not small. The mother of, or the cure of something, it's big. The narcissism, woo, the Jafar is big, because we're all